Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Budzinski, and I'm with Gilda's Club Grand Rapids. And it's great to have you here with us today. We're so grateful that we can stay connected on Facebook while we're all staying safe and doing social distancing. If you're interested at all in what we do, we have a free cancer and grief support community right here in Grand Rapids. Everything we're doing right now is completely virtual. You can just give us a call at 453-8300, or you can connect with us on our website, www.gildasclubgr.org. So today, I have with me a great author all the way from Vegas, Nevada. So it's great to have you with me. We have Jim Petzing, and he's an author of 2 books, wonderful books. One is From Feeding Tube to Final Table, and it chronicles his journey with his neck cancer. And then the second book is called Breathe, and it chronicles his journey up until today, well, really March was the last entry, but for your journey with lung cancer. He also is a local Michigander and lived in Saugatuck for a number of years and owned a wonderful restaurant called Zing. And his boyfriend, Chris, lives here in Grand Rapids area and has 4 wonderful co-parenting, 4 wonderful girls, or children, I should say. And both of them are members at Gilda's Club Grand Rapids in Lowell and have volunteered for us for Camp Sparkle, which
yes,
was
we did
great.
2 summers ago.
Yeah. And then now living in Vegas as a professional poker player. And
that's right.
An exciting life.
Yes, I retired here after beating cancer the first time and selling my restaurant, which was a labor of love that didn't go so well. I moved out here in January of 16 to pursue what was my dream at the time, which was to become a professional poker player. I had played part-time for 7 years and done pretty well in tournament poker, and decided, if I gave this 150% every day, perhaps I could be really successful at this. And I have been, and I'm so glad I followed my path and my dream.
That's awesome. That's really wonderful. I did see some of your interviews at the poker tournaments and whatnot, and watched a couple of those, and how exciting that is. I mean, there's so really few people who do what you do in the world.
Yeah, it's actually a much smaller community that plays, we'll say, part-time, full-time, regularly.
Yeah.
And a lot of us know each other, from the circuit and whatnot. But it's a smaller community than you might think. Yeah. And, my situation with battling cancer now for the second time is very well known in the community. And I've received so much support from my poker friends and from different organizations who've actually had tournaments in my honor where I couldn't go because I was feeling ill. And then they would, have a one tournament of a series kind of dedicated to me. So that's been really special.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. I have a feeling, Jim, wherever you go, you create community pretty strongly.
I try. It's part of I think it's part of my DNA.
Yeah, I think it is. So I just want to let everyone know, here's the book, Breathe, and I have just finished it. Wonderful, wonderful book. Really great book. And while we're doing this interview and just conversation, really, if you have questions for Jim, just let us know, put them right on the post under this live video, and Hannah will help get us those questions, and we'll try to field them for Jim, and so we can get those answered. Yeah.
And if people are interested in ordering the book, just go to Amazon and type in Breathe by Jim Petzing, and it'll take you right to the book.
Great. Wonderful. And I'm assuming that both of your books are there too?
Actually, the second book is the first book I wrote is out of print because it was so long ago and it stopped selling.
Okay.
So you'll just find this one book,
All right.
which was
So,
released on August 1st.
okay,
Yeah.
great. And just for people in Grand Rapids to know is that we do have copies of his Feeding Tube to Final Table in our libraries at Lowell Clubhouse and in the Grand Rapids Clubhouse. For when we open, you're welcome to check those out and read those.
Great idea.
So, yeah. So excellent. Well, we're just so interested in why journaling? What has journaling done for you? Were you a journaler before you were diagnosed? And yeah, tell us about that.
That's a great question that I don't get asked too often, so I'm excited to answer it.
Great.
I have always enjoyed writing. My background is promotional marketing, and I did international marketing training and consulting for 25 years. I had my own business, and I traveled the world for US marketers training their international executives. Been to 90 countries, and I enjoyed that experience and kind of kept notes and kind of wrote to myself about it. So I'd have memories on it. And then I got diagnosed with neck cancer in late 2014. And my choices for treatment were not good. It was either have half of my tongue taken out, reformed, put back in, and learn to speak all over again, which would take a year, or have 35 straight days of radiation treatments with weekly chemotherapy for 7 weeks and have my entire neck, inside and outside, neck and throat area emaciated. And I chose option 2. And I knew that during that time, people would really be interested in knowing how I was doing. And I have chosen to be public about both of my cancers, where other people choose to be very private. And there's no right or wrong answer with that. But for me, given my kind of social butterfly DNA, I felt it was important because I do have so many friends that were going to be interested. I wanted to keep them updated. And I thought, well, I'm going to have all this time on my hands. I'm not going to be able to eat, drink, speak, swallow, talk because of my neck. So I couldn't actually have a conversation with people. So I found caringbridge.org, which is a cancer support website where you can blog your journey and you can direct people to your page on the site, and you can update people all at once with what your status is. So I thought, how great. I can journal every day, gives me something to do. I also read that it's therapeutically proven to aid in healing if you write about what you're suffering through. Okay. And so I did that. And it was a great experience for me. And it was my first book, and it did pretty well. But I learned a lot about what I wouldn't do in my second book. And then when I sadly got diagnosed with stage 3B non-small cell lung cancer in October of 17, 3 years ago, I knew that it was going to be an even longer battle. It only took me 3 months to beat neck cancer. It was a pretty intensive treatment and I beat it. But with stage 3B lung cancer, I'm chronic, incurable, and inoperable. So I can only be managed, not cured. So I knew that this was going to be a long fight for me. And I thought, I got a lot out of journaling the first time. Why not do it a second time? Sure. And I did it again. And I wrote consistently for the first 2 years, or first year and a half I was sick. And then I took a year off when I was feeling good and had found a test drug. And then I wrote consistently again for 6 months up until, you said, Melissa, March of this year. And this time, what was different for me in my journaling, and what was different for me overall, was I found my spirituality during this process. I really needed something to grab onto and hold on to provide me with hope and inspiration so I could battle this dreadful disease, knowing that I'm never going to be cured. So for me, the goal was let's, keep going as long as we can with quality of life and maximize each day to its fullest. And I just felt by journaling my story with lung cancer, and I'm a never smoked. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. I just felt like, people need to understand that getting a lung cancer diagnosis, which I'm now in stage 4 as of February, is not a death sentence. Many people with the medical treatments advances that we have today, you can live a lot longer than the internet will tell you when you're diagnosed. So I'm definitely an outlier. And as I mentioned, I found a test drug by frequently posting on Facebook my situation. A friend of mine from high school saw my plight, and chemo had not worked, radiation had not worked. The immunotherapy drug I was put on had a 5% chance of working. And she just happened to be working for a pharmaceutical company doing test drugs for lung cancer patients. So she contacted me, and I exactly fit the profile of who they were looking for. And under a program called Compassionate Use, they brought the trial to me in Vegas from California because they thought I would be too sick to travel each week for 16 weeks to get the test drug injections. So they came and trained my chemo facility, my doctor, my nurses, and I'm now over 2 years on this test drug, along with immunotherapy and off and on with chemo. And I'm doing overall better than anybody expected.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So your writing in your first cancer experience became your voice that you actually physically didn't have. So it became this voice for you. And so, and sounds to me like really helped in your healing and processing of this experience of everything you go through on a cancer journey.
I think it's such a shock for anybody when out of the blue they're told they have cancer. And for me, the next symptom I had was a lump on my left side of my neck.
Yeah.
Came out of nowhere. I was playing in a major poker tournament out here in Vegas, and one morning I woke up and was shaving and found this lump, and I'm like, what's that? And then I went back home. I went to the doctor. They gave me antibiotics. It didn't go away. And then I went to the ear, nose, and throat doc, and boom, you have neck cancer. And neck cancer is caused by generally excessive drinking or smoking, which I was neither, but often from the HPV virus, which is a human papilloma virus, which is why you see, at least here in Vegas, we get it every summer, lots of ads about vaccinating your 12 and 13-year-old kids before they start having sex, because HPV is transferred through sex and it lives in your body. And for some people like me, it came about as cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you're right, Melissa. That first book was my voice because I didn't have one. And I was on a feeding tube for 3 months and incredibly uncomfortable. I was told by most doctors that it's the worst treatment you can have. Neck or throat cancer treatment is absolutely the worst because it affects so many things that you do: eating, breathing, swallowing, talking. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
The difference with lung cancer for me has been dealing with the emotional aspects of knowing I will not beat this, and not knowing when my time will be up. And so trying to keep positive and believe that I can be that outlier who lives a longer life with quality has kept me going. And I have been. I mean, I had a meeting with my doctor a week or so ago, and he's like, Jim, it's been 3 years, and look at you. You'd never know you were sick.
Yeah.
And I'm really sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, feel good. But, I have my good days and my bad days. I'm on a good day today.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad. I was thinking about you this morning and wondering how today was going to be.
We have a freeze on my screen.
We do. We can still hear you, and it will unfreeze, I think, in a minute. So it's a cute face, though. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're coming back.
Okay. Is it? I lost him. I'm not sure about. Oh, shoot. Jim, are you there? Hannah, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I think we're just having a little bit of technical difficulty with our connection here. So thank you everyone for being patient. Hopefully Jim will pop back on. Here he comes.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, good. Yay. There you are. Okay. So I was just thinking about what a beautiful transformation of this journal writing, of being your voice that first time into being your process. Because the second, as you said, the second cancer experience is your perspective, it shifts because it's about your quality of life and how you want to live rather than this battle for fighting, right? And
yes, very much so.
Yeah, and so that it helped you, it seems like, really shift that into that perspective of what do I want my life to look like right now, living today fully.
Yes, and a big impetus for me to kind of look at my life a little differently was a Christmas gift. I was diagnosed in October of 17, and for that Christmas, my father and my stepmother sent me this book. Some of you may be familiar with it. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, and it's a book of daily devotions. Some might define it as religious. I'm going to define it as more spiritual. And there's a devotion for each day. And it was so ironic because I would get up starting January 1. I started reading the book, January 1, 18, while I was writing my book. And I would get an inspiration for the day. And oftentimes that inspiration led into what I wrote about for that day. Mm-hmm. So if you read my book, Breathe, you'll see the first third of it is more process oriented, but the second 2/3 of it weaves a lot of spirituality into my fight this time around. It's interesting because my treatment has been not nearly as painful as my neck cancer treatment, but it has been so drawn out over 3 years that it's been emotionally and physically exhausting. And I think what most people don't understand about many lung cancer patients on chemo is we already have a tough time breathing and doing simple things. Like my right lung basically has no functionality. So when we're on chemo, in addition to already having a bad situation in our lung, the lethargy and extreme exhaustion becomes so intense that changing the cat box or walking from my bed to the kitchen to get a bottle of water, God forbid vacuuming or making a meal, is so difficult because you absolutely have no desire, will, or energy to do any of it. I describe it as feeling, if you ever had mononucleosis when you were a kid and you just laid on the couch with your sore throat. Here, there's no sore throat, but you have that exhaustive feeling times 100. And it goes on and on and on, and you have to learn to live with it. So I needed something to pick me up every day. And Sarah James's or Young's book and my writing did that for me, as did all the support I was getting from people on Caring Bridge, you know, responding to my daily journals, and from Facebook, where I kept people posted there also.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in using your social media platforms to get additional emotional support. At times you won't like what people say, but in general, I know I have so many people out there rooting for me and praying for me. I'm on multiple prayer lists, and I'm not a big religious person, but I know it makes a difference and I feel it. And that may sound corny to some people, but for me, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think that's why this book and your message and your experience really connects with Gilda's, is because Gilda Radner had that same experience, is that it was so important, and our members have that same experience. It's so important to feel connected, that often people can feel very alone on this journey, and that it can intensify their treatment, and it can be make it much more difficult. And just speaking about your journey, just talking about your experience. And even though some people may say something, and you can decide whether to take that in or to leave that, but that you feel connected, understood, and seen is so important.
It's so important, especially if you live alone like I do. You're absolutely right. You tend to want to go into isolation, hibernation. My friends and my boyfriend joke with me, I keep my place very dark. It's like a cave, but it's comfortable, but it's not healthy, you know? And so they are constantly saying, Jim, go sit by the pool. Jim, go take a walk. And I'm like, you don't understand. I feel like shit today, you know? And they're like, you've got to get out. You've got to do something. But I know they're there and they have good intent and they're rooting for me. And at some point I do break down, and I will make those changes when I'm ready. And I do, and I have. So
sometimes you need a little bit of a push. You know, a push out the door, right?
Yeah, even when you're a, you know, control freak like I tend to be sometimes. So.
Well, we're having some questions from Facebook. Would you like to hear? Yeah, that's great. So, Jim, knowing that this stage of your life is a long-term, hopefully 50 years journey, how do you deal with the mental fatigue of I am worse, I am better, questions, you know, should I go into the doctor, etc. Like all of those. She says she resonates with her diagnosis of lymphoma.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And what struck me in the question was the term mental fatigue.
Yeah.
I think that really captures well how I feel now.
Yeah.
3 years into this, it's like I don't want to end my treatments, but I know I need them, but they make me feel horrible. And so you're constantly in this physical, emotional battle of, is it worth it? You know, do I really want to put my body and myself and my mind through all this? But at the end of the day, if you can find a treatment program, even if you have a chronic condition or an incurable diagnosis, if you can find a treatment program that's going to help manage your situation and extend your life with quality, and the with quality is very important here.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to give it a shot. And, you know, I think when you can't have your life extended with quality, then it becomes a very rocky road of decision making of, do I continue with this? Do I just let myself go and let, you know, nature take its course, let my higher power decide what he's going to do with me? But I believe that if you have the opportunity to do something that can extend you with quality, you got to go do it. And you know what? It includes mental fatigue. That doesn't go away. It only gets worse.
Yeah. So I wonder how your support circles, your blogging, that, your social media, how does that support you in making those decisions and really attending to that mental fatigue?
I wouldn't say my support group or my close family or my close friends and family get involved in my medical decisions. I pretty much rely on myself for that. I know my body better than anybody. I know what I'm capable of and not capable of. And that's a learning I've gotten in the second round. Like, it's amazing how strong we really are mentally and physically. Our bodies can handle a lot. And I don't believe our higher power gives us anything we can't handle. So I think we're challenged and you've got barriers put in front of you. So I go for it. I've always been competitive. I'm a poker player. I was an athlete. It's like, I'm going to win and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. So I think my desire to win, and winning equals extending my life with quality in a fatal situation, ultimately, that's what I'm about. And I use my social network and my family and my good friends as supporters, people that I'll say, this is how I'm feeling today. And they'll give me some kind of thing like, oh my gosh, Jim, you're doing so amazing. I could never do what you do. And when I hear that, I'm like, yes, like I am strong. I am working hard, and I believe that I can make a difference for myself with the help of medicine.
So they really help. Sounds to me like just reflecting back their point of view of what they actually see, because often when we're in mental fatigue, we don't see everything that we're actually doing. And so they're able to really validate what they see you doing, and that helps to lift you emotionally and mentally to continue on.
And that's so needed. I describe mental fatigue. I've been thinking about, how do I describe it? I describe it as flailing in a black hole, where you're just flailing in outer space with no direction and no knowledge of where you're going or how you're going to get there, or if you'll get there, and how well will you feel, and when's your time up. And it's very frustrating, especially if you're a planner type of person. And you've always had your plan laid out for, well, when I'm 30, I'm going to do this. And when I'm 40, I'm going to have this. And when I'm 50, I'm going to be early retired. And when I'm 60, I'm going to be, living in Florida. Like, it all goes to, crap when you get diagnosed with any kind of, difficult disease.
That's right. That's right. So a couple of things is that it is 1:32, and I want to be cognizant of your energy level and your time.
I'm willing to go forward if people would like to stay on.
Okay. I have a couple more questions from Facebook, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. So how do you deal with being so sick, but not looking sick? Do people understand that you're sick? Are the expectations different? And this is from Barbara.
Barbara, that's such a good question. And I'm laughing because it happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
I'll get the tilted head, like, you have stage 4 lung cancer? You don't look sick, you don't act sick, and I'm like, well, let me explain to you my situation. I'm really sick. I'm not going to get better. I can't get a lung replacement or a partial lung replacement. They can't get rid of the cancer. So it's going to kill me. Now, it may not be the lung cancer that kills me, but it could be a cell that gets out and goes to another organ that causes cancer there. And I'm in stage 4, as I mentioned, because I do have cancer in other areas, like a rib and the top of my stomach. And I've got a bunch of nodes in the middle of my chest, but it hasn't gone anywhere lethal yet. But my expectation longer term, and I'm being honest and true with myself, and this is what you'll read if you go online and research, is it's going to go somewhere else at some point.
Yeah.
And so I think when I have a conversation with people who kind of do the head tilt when they say you stage 4 cancer and you've never smoked, that's right. And anyone can get it. And I just was an unfortunate one, but I've learned to embrace it. It doesn't define me. It's not who I am. And I'm not going to pity party myself every day and whine about my situation, because what good is that? It's not going to help me get better. It's going to make me feel worse. So I try to surround myself with people and situations that make me feel good.
Well, and it sounds like you really take that moment for education, for educating people about, that you can get certain types of cancer, even though you didn't have these particular kinds of behaviors, like smoking or whatever, and that you can have an illness like cancer and be active and make decisions about your life that helps reinforce this living piece and living this moment as much as you can.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's been really difficult, and I'm surprised nobody's asked this yet, and this was unforeseen by any of us, is anyone who's dealing with cancer and living alone right now is really having a tough time because of COVID.
Yeah.
COVID has become this additional layer of stress and difficulty that people who are sick shouldn't have to deal with, but it's life. And so I'm sure, that the depression level of anybody faced with a disease of any sort that is even further locked down at home, if they're following, CDC guidelines for a vulnerable condition, it's so hard. Mm-hmm. And I never expected it would be this difficult to not be able to actually do many of the things I wish I could be doing when I'm feeling up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with you. And many of our groups talk about that isolation and talk about especially right at this actual moment, because we are moving from a time where we could interact outside with social distancing, but we were able to be with each other in small groups and that kind of thing, moving into a time of a very possible impending shutdown again, or numbers rising, so people are being more careful and the weather is turning, and so that it's starting a lot more conversation around that.
And interestingly, I was having trouble personally dealing with this after 8 months. Yeah. And I decided to treat myself to live poker, which I hadn't done since March. So about 3 weeks ago, I played my first live tournament and I was triple masked. I had a medical mask, a KN95 mask, and a shield, and a hoodie. And I play in a casino that has plexiglass dividers between you and the other players. And they're very, very much following, the important protocols for sanitation and cleanliness. So I felt safe. And I've played 3 times in 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times. And today, for the past 2 days, I've had 100-degree fever. So, I don't know if it's a good possibility I pick something up.
Yeah.
And now I'm not so certain that that's going to be an environment that I'm going to go back to, because COVID's running rampant, as we speak. So I think I have to go back on my, go back to my lockdown.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So do you have
I definitely understand the need to, to live quality. You have to not just exist, you have to live. And there's a difference between existing and living. Right. And for me, I just couldn't exist anymore. I had to start living. But now I'm not so sure that's a smart idea.
Yeah. Well, and there's a balance, right? And sometimes we have to sort of just evaluate that in the moment And in that moment, you made the best decision you could, and now you make another decision, right?
Exactly.
As you move forward, right?
And I did reach out to my support network. This is interesting, to get their
Yeah.
opinion about me giving up lockdown and going and venturing out.
Yeah.
And 100% people are like, Jim, you got to go do it. Just be safe as you can. And I was, and, be conscious. And I was, and, now I've been, sick for the past couple of days. I don't feel horrible, but I have had 100.6 fever last night. I'm supposed to get my test drug injections today. And the doctor's like, if you're 100.4 or more, no. So I'm waiting to see later this afternoon if that's an option for me or not.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I have so many questions for you, but we could keep, you're so easy to talk to. We could keep talking for such a long time.
I'm happy to stay as long as you like.
I do have a funny question someone posted. You want to take this?
Ah.
All right. So it says,
very important when you're sick.
Yes. It says, how does masking up like that affect your poker face?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, to the point where dealers I've known for years didn't recognize me.
Oh my
So
goodness.
what was great was if the dealers didn't recognize me, any players that I played with regularly, most did not recognize me. Actually, a very good acquaintance friend of mine, I sat at the same table with him and he didn't recognize me. So it really helped my game because nobody knew who I was.
It increased your poker face.
Totally. All they can see is your eyes.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, interesting. That's great.
It does make it a little hotter under the collar when you're wearing all that stuff, but I was really worried about keeping myself safe.
Yeah. That's most important. Yeah. So I guess one last question, maybe last, I don't know, but is that what are you hoping people get out of your book? What's a takeaway that you're hoping people receive from reading your book and your journey, sharing your journey? Oh, I think we're frozen again.
Oh, we've frozen.
Yep. I can hear you though, if you want to talk. Oh, are you back? Maybe he has to go off again. All right, everyone. Oh, he's back. Yay!
What was your question? What do I hope to what?
What do you hope people get from reading your book, from sharing your journey? Yeah.
That's very easy for me to answer. There are three things. I want the book to be educational. I know for me, when I went through neck cancer, I never knew anybody that had gone through cancer, let alone neck cancer, which is one of the more rare cancers.
Yeah.
So with lung cancer, there are many different aspects of lung cancer and types. But again, I wanted the book to be educational for both the patient who might be going through it and the family who needs to understand what the patient is going through. Not just physically going through, but emotionally going through. So education, inspiration. I want people, like I said earlier, to know that you can be diagnosed with stage 3B or 4 lung cancer and view it as a death sentence. And if you go on the internet and read all about it, you'll learn that 5% of people are not living 5 years from their, or 5% of people, only 5% of people are living 5 years from the diagnosis.
Sure.
That's something I do not recommend anybody do, by the way, is go on the internet when you get diagnosed. Worst thing ever. It's all negative Nelly news. So I want the book to be proof that you can lead a quality life for 3 years by keeping a positive attitude, doing what the doctors suggest, following the regimen, and believing in yourself and believing that you're strong. And then lastly, hope. And that's the spiritual aspect of it. I think hope's an underrated concept that, we talk about, but we don't necessarily know how to deliver on. And for me, the Jesus Calling book provided me with hope I needed to see my situation in a different way. And so I wove it into my book because it was providing me with hope, and I hoped it would provide hope for others.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I think actually you, at least in my reading both of your books, that hit on all three of those marks.
And that's the feedback I've been getting from most people. If you read the reviews on Amazon, of which there are 20 or so, that's what people are saying too. And so I met my goal. It was good.
Yeah. And I think there's an additional thing that, and certainly that it, in the book study that could come up in January, that we, one of the other things that really struck me was this piece of self-advocacy within the medical field and within your support circles, right? Is how important that is, and how it is okay to question. It is okay to ask for what you need. It is okay to get and plan for second, third, fourth opinions. It's a necessary part of that. It's yeah, and you do such a beautiful job of doing it, actually doing those things and explaining it.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple things on self-advocacy. When I had neck cancer, I didn't know what I was up for. I didn't know what was going to be involved. I didn't know I'd have 4 different doctors, all with different opinions. I had no guidance. I had nobody. I knew one person that had had neck cancer, and it was a severe situation that didn't go well for that person. And so I got to the point in my neck cancer battle that I broke down with my radiation oncologist one day because I felt like nobody was watching out for me. I said, I feel lost. Everybody's saying different things. I don't know the decisions I need to make. They're life decisions. I'm not educated enough. And I'm a smart guy. I'm Ivy League educated. And I'm sitting here like, help me. I don't know what's going on here. And, and I would, to have them define terms they were using if I didn't understand. And she said, I will be your angel. I will support you. And that made all the difference in the world. She was my go-to person when I was feeling lost and needed help. So I think it's very important that you work hard at developing strong relationships with at least one of your doctors, that you can have that non-traditional discussion with. It's not just medicinal, where it's not just doctor patient, but there's some humanity in the conversation.
Right.
So that was something I learned in round 1. In round 2, my biggest aha moment, I'll never forget this. And I talk a little bit about it in the book, but I don't get into a lot of detail because a doctor broke code. And I didn't want to expose that, but it was to my benefit.
Yeah.
And this is very important. When I came back from Michigan after having an x-ray, I was visiting Chris. The x-ray showed that I had walking pneumonia and a gray matter area in my lung. And my doctor in Michigan was like, Jim, when you get home back to Vegas, go have a CAT scan. So I did. And the minute the CAT scan results came back, my primary care physician here in Vegas called me and said, you need to come into my office tomorrow morning. And I knew what that meant, that I had a problem. So I go in and he's like, Jim, you have stage 3B lung cancer. I'm like, what? I go from walking pneumonia to stage 3B lung cancer, and I wasn't even that sick with the walking pneumonia. I was functioning normally. I wasn't at home in bed or anything. He's like, I know it's hard to understand, but you're in a really bad place. He said, it's spreading. It has the potential to kill you soon. And he's like, here's our problem. He said, if I follow the procedures outlined for me by the medical community and the insurance community, I need to refer you to a specialist who is going to need to see you to decide what the next steps are to investigate further that mass you have that is cancer. They have to then refer you to a surgeon who's going to go in to biopsy it and find out what kind of cancer it is so they can treat you appropriately. And then you're going to have to find a chemo oncologist who's going to be 3 weeks before you'll get in to see him. And so by the time you start getting chemo, it could be 3 months from now.
Wow.
Like, you don't have 3 months. So I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You need to put on an Academy Award performance at the emergency room in the hospital tonight or tomorrow when you're up for it. And you need to go in and tell them that you have been coughing nonstop, that you know there's something wrong, and that blood has come up. The minute you say blood has come up from coughing, they have to admit you.
Oh, wow.
Like, you're not going to tell them you know you have cancer, even though you do. You're going to let them find the cancer. And when they find the cancer in the hospital, after they do their x-rays and their CT scans, they're going to biopsy you immediately, and they're going to test it, and they're going to assign you a chemo oncologist, and you're going to save 3 months.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm in. I'll do it. Now, I think about 75-year-old people, 70-year-old people who are not type A's, who are type B's, passive, always have listened, like would never break the rules. Okay, you have to break the rules sometimes.
Yeah.
To get what you need. This is about your life.
Right.
Not anybody else's. And you have no reason to wait in line for your time to get treatment. You need to get it when you know you need it. And that's what I did. And I am so grateful. My book is dedicated to him. You know, and he's no longer my physician. He moved out of my network and maybe out of state. But wow, thank God.
He was one of your first angels on.
He was.
Yeah.
I have
Wow.
earthly angels and heavenly angels.
That's quite a story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and basically that's what advocacy is all about. Like, get a relationship with a doctor who's going to care about you, not as a number, but as a person. Yeah. And even in the small time he knew me, we bonded enough that he was able to make that suggestion to me and felt comfortable that I wouldn't betray a confidence.
That's pretty cool. And the beauty in that too is that piece of connectedness. Is it sounds like that you really felt connected to that radiologist and seen as a person, not as a patient, and with your doctor. And that is just so important. And I think really that's what your book is all about, is about being seen, being connected, being heard, and how important those things are when you're going through something like a cancer experience.
Totally. Well said.
Yeah. Well, we are going to wrap it up here, and just so grateful for you, Jim, sharing your story, writing it down, being willing to talk about it, and staying connected and honest and open. Really such a beautiful thing. I think that you are the embodiment of hope.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me tell my story. You know, if I can help one person from this call, then I feel like I've done my job for today.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, you helped me, so check that box off.
All right.
Okay. And I want to say here again is his book, Breathe. You can get it on Amazon. And Gilda's Club has the other books, from Feeding Tube to Final Table. And when we open up again after all of this crazy Corona stuff and COVID stuff, that we'll be able to check that out. So thank you, Jim, for being with us. Thank you for sharing your wonderful story and yourself. You're such a joy. And so, anyone who's interested in getting connected with Gilda's Club, getting connected with an emotional support, community, if you're on a cancer journey, or you're supporting a person on a cancer journey, or you're on a grief journey from any kind of death, please give us a call. You can look us up on the web, www.gildasclubgr.org, and our phone number, I said call, 616-453-8300. We're 100% virtual right now. And we're excited to announce that Jim will be with us in January, hosting a book study and talking about all of these issues and more, I'm sure. And so we're looking so forward to that. And everything that we offer at Gilda's Club is 100% free. There's no charge to you or your insurance, and family and friends are welcome. So thank you again, Jim, for being with us. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you again in January.
Yes, I'm excited for January.
All right. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please share it on your Facebook. Tell friends about it. And yeah, so that's everything. Thank you so much. See everyone soon, I hope.